Hello, and welcome to Expats on Air. Today we have a extra special guest. He's a guy I know from way back, from like more than 20 years ago, I'd say. We went to the same international school together, and we're going to talk a lot about that, international schools today. So, oops. Little tech error there. I'm not going to edit that. So, Nick, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Thank you for that introduction from the top of my head there. But yeah, this is all going unedited, huh? I like that, man. We're live. We're just doing it live.
We're doing it live.
I don't know how many people will remember that reference.
Think of it as a live stream, but I'm just not live streaming it. We're just going live record. I will eventually live stream. You can see on the screen here, there's Twitch and Trovo, which are live platforms. So we'll eventually be on there. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get into you. Nick, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So I was born in Tokyo, Japan, back in 1986. My dad was an American, mom Japanese, so what you call half. And I attended the American school in Japan my whole life, from nursery, kindergarten, all the way until graduation. That's actually how I know Nathan. Went to high school together, as well as middle school. And following graduation, I went to the United States for college. But then I returned back to Japan to work as what is, proverbially known as a sarariman, basically I guess a white collar worker at a company called PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I was there for about a year. And then I left to pursue a master's in international education. And that was back in 2010. And since then, I've worked in Honduras, Bahrain, Japan, and currently I reside in South Korea as a social studies teacher, and I teach economics, psychology, and AP research.
Yeah, and you really grew up in this lifestyle. I mean, I feel like I have, because I went to international schools growing up, but you were one level deeper, and a lot deeper, because your father worked at the international school. So you had a parent who was actually faculty, and now you've gone into this sort of career path. Can you talk a little bit about that, like your background and how that kind of got you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I was quasi-faculty child, and I say that because a lot of people actually who know me even don't know this, but the first, so I spent about 15 years at ASIJ when you include I didn't stay back any years. When you include nursery and kindergarten and stuff, about 15 years. And of that 15, my first 8, actually, my father was a business owner, and we were what we'd call self-payers. So he was actually paying out of his pocket. So in that sense, a lot of money, as you're familiar with, for these international schools. So in that sense, my family sort of has the unique perspective of sort of, he basically his money, his wallet backs up his statements. A lot of people say they value the international school education system, but, he was willing to put in, almost $200,000 of my, education at ASIJ. Prior to him, as you mentioned, he worked at ASIJ for, I think, 18 years. And of those 18 years, I was maybe there about 6 years. So those 6 years, tuition, I think, was free. I think now most schools, either tuition is free or faculty are asked to pay a nominal fee, like 5%, 10%, which is quite reasonable for, a world-class education.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm very lucky, very blessed that my dad was on one of those old school expat packages. And so they paid for the school. My dad didn't have to fork out how much per year, like ASIJ, the American school in Japan where we went. Every year was like a college tuition, right? How much was it when we were going there?
It was about, obviously colleges are just crazy now. So it's less than college today. But today, I think a lot of the top schools are about, 20 to 30,000. But when we were there, it was probably about 15 to 20. But that was back when, the college I went to, it was public. So for the kids who were California residents, when I was at Berkeley in 2008, 2009, they were paying $7,000 a year. And then kids at ASIJ were paying $18,000 a year. So, it was definitely quite, it's an expensive investment. As you mentioned, um, for these expats, it's definitely an expensive part of the package.
Yeah, and I saw the other side of that because I have a son and he's 6 years old. And we were living in Shanghai a year ago. So a year ago, we would have been in Shanghai. And he was going to an international preschool. And it was about 7,000 RMB a month, but there was only half a day. And it was very small. And it was like a very like affordable, you could say, and that's 7,000 RMBs over $1,000, so it's about $1,000 a month. But if I wanted to send my kid to one of the top schools, when he started kindergarten, I mean, I guess I could have paid for it, but I would have had money for nothing else. We would have been eating cans of tuna every night or something like that. Are you aware of the costs
I think you bring up
in a
a
place
great
like?
point.
Oh, sorry. I think there's a little delay, so I cut you off there. Are you aware of the prices in China? Because you've spent a lot of time in Korea, Japan, but as for East Asia, are you aware of some of the other markets, so to speak?
I've heard of that. Yeah, as you would be aware of, there's sort of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a bit more depth later on. There's sort of the heavy hitter schools like Shanghai American School, and Concordia International School, HKIS. Although I mean it's in Hong Kong, so the whole China thing there's a little tricky. But yeah, you get the point. And yeah, I think those places, if I'm not mistaken, they're maybe even more expensive than places like ASIJ.
Yeah, and ASIJ, it's in Tokyo, but it's not really in Tokyo, right? Like, where would you say it is in relation to, downtown Tokyo? However you define downtown.
Yeah, so
Tokyo's such a big place.
it's yeah, I think a good sort of an apt metaphor would be, in New York, we look at New York, at least someone like me who's an outsider, and I think of New York City, right? I think of Manhattan, I think of, that whole Broadway area. But then you forget there's New York State, and there's this whole area of New York that, most of us tourists never get to. And that's a similar scenario basically with Tokyo, where you have Tokyo, the 23 wards, which is like where you lived and where most of the downtown kids lived and most of the schools were. But ASIJ is located in what would be considered the non-23 wards, so out west. And yeah, as you would remember, and for people who don't know, it's like a good 45 minutes away from the city. And I think that's why that school had a unique advantage of, facilities, which, I guess I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but when we think of international schools, I think that's also a big factor is facilities. And, as of late, I've gone to Bangkok a lot. And I've seen, their best two international schools, most people would agree, are ISB, International School of Bangkok, and NIST. And NIST, it's a beautiful school, but they have one soccer field. And a lot of these other schools are kind of are more in spacious areas. For example, the school I I work at, we have 3 soccer fields. So to me, it's very interesting to see how facilities are very different, simply based on, how much of the real estate is, because you're not going to build 3 fields in downtown Tokyo. That would bankrupt any school.
For sure. I was going to do a really trite thing and be like, so, did you go to Bangkok for business or pleasure? But we'll skip that and we'll get to where you're working, because you're working in an island in Korea, right? Jeju Island. Can you talk about what that's like? Like you mentioned, you have all that space for the fields, but what else is that like in living in, I guess you could say, an isolated space like that?
Yeah, it's a unique project they have here. It's sort of a semi-autonomous region. And because of its semi-autonomous status, in countries like China and Korea, and I actually wasn't aware of this growing up, in Japan, essentially, if you have the English ability, you can get accepted to schools like ASIJ, St. Mary's, etc. But in places like Korea and China, there's actually rules that you have to have lived abroad for 3 years, or one of your parents have to hold an American passport. And that rule is not applied on this island. So in that sense, it attracts a great deal. There's a demographic, throughout Korea of people who want to attend international schools, but they can't because maybe they don't fit that profile, where they don't have dual citizenship or their parents don't have dual citizenship. So to serve that demographic, the government started this project called the Global Education City, and it's where I live. And it's 4 international schools just next to each other, 4 giant international schools. And yeah, they're all just about at capacity. There's 1 or 2 that maybe are not quite there, but it's a very interesting project. As you said, there's nothing in the area, so it's how you really look at that scenario. I think from the parents' perspective, parents look at it as sort of less of a distraction. It kind of reminds me of these Northeastern private schools, right? They're usually in the middle of nowhere, like in Connecticut or like New Hampshire. I think it's a similar sort of ethos. But obviously, when you're young, and this includes young teachers too, but of course the older teenagers, they, I imagine, prefer Seoul because there's a lot more things to do there. And I definitely empathize with them because we grew up in Tokyo, which gave us really no shortage of activities to do.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at the sort of freedom we had as teenagers and the kind of stuff you could get into that would really worry parents, like if you're in another country. I mean, we were pretty safe in Tokyo, but I mean, I'm a parent now. Looking back, I look at it much differently. Do I want my son to be out drinking in a downtown, metropolis, getting wasted in a bar? I've been drugged in Tokyo. Have you been drugged before? Have you ever had like your drink spiked? Luckily, it happened when I was It happened when I was an adult, but I've been drugged before in Tokyo at one of those shady bars in like Roppongi or in Shinjuku too. Jeez.
Were they trying to rob you, or
what was that?
Or were they trying to get someone else? Were they trying to rob you, or were they trying to get someone else and you took someone's drink?
I don't know, but I woke up in a McDonald's. That McDonald's in Roppongi. One time I woke up in there, and my last memory, I was with a guy we went to school with, who I'm not going to say his name for his own privacy, but my last memory was him being strangled by an African gentleman in an elevator, and I was trying to stop him. And then next thing I know, it's 5 hours later, I'm in a McDonald's by myself. It was very odd, but I'm pretty sure I was drugged.
Wow, this was in high school.
No, this was how many years ago? This was like 8 years ago or something. Maybe 6 years ago. Oh. Yeah. It could have been in college. It's hard to remember. I go back to Tokyo every now and then. How often do you go back to Tokyo?
I've been quite fortunate in the sense that the proximity from Jeju to Tokyo is about 2 hours. So obviously, until Corona hit, I was able to go about 3 times a year.
3 times a year, and you still have family there, right?
Yeah, my mom and dad are still in Tokyo, and then I have 2 younger brothers in California and Kansas, of all places.
Okay. And are your parents involved in the international school scene in Tokyo still?
Not really, and I say not really because my mother is very loosely involved in the sense that substitute teaching is still a thing there, and because they live quite close to ASIJ, my mother still substitute teaches there, I believe. But my father, he's just back to doing his own work, his own business.
Well, that's cool. So, yeah, I mean, I knew your dad from school, obviously, but I had no idea about that other side where he had that business going on. That's interesting because I guess you usually don't hear about that. Usually these international school teachers, right, they're often, you can tell the career track a lot better, and I wanted you to get into this on this show. That's like one of the main reasons I want to talk to you is talk about this international school circuit. How do you actually become one? If you're a teacher in the U.S., like a public school teacher, how do you eventually become an international school teacher if that's something you want to do?
I think, it's quite loaded there. So I guess first we need to sort of define sort of the parameters of what, makes an international school versus what isn't. Because as, we're both aware of, there are these certain schools, and for people who aren't aware, that are just sort of the quintessential, quote unquote, international schools, right? That where you have people from multiple countries, a lot of expats. It's usually quite expensive. They're certified by some, organization, whether it's the Southern Association of Colleges and School, Western Association of School and Colleges, Council of International Schools, often IB programs. So you have that on one hand. And on the other hand, you do have schools that just simply are, usually they use euphemisms like bilingual school. And it will be a school that is essentially, you pay a little bit of extra money, but ultimately, a lot of the teachers aren't certified. You have a academic program that isn't maybe quite as rigorous, and obviously that's very hard to measure from the outside. But at least one sort of way one could measure a school's academic rigor would be, and I recommend this to anyone, especially as your child gets older, at least at the high school level. You just Google high school profile, school name, and then PDF, and then it tells you usually the matriculation of like where the kids are going. And obviously, it doesn't mean it's a, if one school sends 3 kids to Harvard and the other doesn't, it doesn't mean the second school is necessarily bad, but you begin to see patterns. If there's a school that is consistently sending students to good schools, and then on the other hand, there's another school, that maybe doesn't even have a high school. And obviously that's a whole nother set of questions, but I've noticed that a lot of these schools that don't have high schools are usually sort of up and coming, right? They're not quite established yet. But yeah, how can one become an international school teacher? I think it's a lot more simple than I think people might imagine. There's these job fairs, very reminiscent of actually what the Japanese do, where they have these big fairs, where you have 200 companies, very similar, big fairs, obviously not now with Corona, but you basically have 200 schools. And it's just like people, let's say a few thousand teachers, and they're in various locations. And obviously each of these congregations sort of are somewhat based on level. So there's a UNI fair, the University of Northern Iowa fair, where that one is more catered towards younger teachers. So a lot of people I know, that was where they got their first job. And sort of the joke is, and I guess this would apply towards, industries you've been involved in as well. But the joke is they usually say you need 2 years experience. And for someone who's getting started, it's kind of like a big middle finger in your face when you look at 20 schools and all 20 schools are you need 2 years. But sort of the unspoken reality is if you go to a lesser desired, less competitive school, you might be able to, enter without that 2 years. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I think that's how most people get in are the job fairs. You go to, there's companies like ISS, Search Associates, UNI has its own, and you go to the fair and it's a crazy world because in those 3 days, and I've never attended any myself, but I've spoken to, actually my wife has, for example, and people have to make these life decisions where they literally will have on the table a choice of like, are you going to go to Mexico City? Are you going to go to Myanmar? Are you going to go to Japan? And you have to make up your mind in like one night. And that's like your life for the next 3 years, 4 years. So it's quite stressful from what I hear.
Wow. And then the 2 years experience thing, is that just 2 years teaching experience, period? Or is it like 2 years international school teaching?
It's 2 years, period. So, one way to possibly do it would get 2 years in the States, but it seems like most people nowadays who do come international that's their mindset is they would rather do 2 years at a lesser desirable school and then move on to another international school. But yeah, I think if you did 2 years in the States, you would still fulfill that minimal requirement.
Now, there is this trend in China where a lot of foreigners go over there and they teach English. And same for Japan. And at least for China, I can speak to this one. If you want to teach back in America or at an international school, they often don't even take that English teaching experience seriously. Is that the case, would you say?
Yeah, I think, it's better than nothing. But generally speaking, for example, my school, as well as most schools, we're just like on a chart, basically, how many years have you taught, 7, 14, whatever. And the ESL teaching, like at a place like, Berlitz, or I guess in Japan, it'd be like GABA, that would count as 0. So yeah, it would not count as years of international teaching.
Or just any teaching, like for that matter.
Yeah, it would, again, I think it would depend on the administrator. And at least personally, I'd rather have someone, who has 5 years plus 4 years teaching English than someone who, assuming all other factors are equal, than someone who has 5 years without the 4 years of English teaching. But it is sort of looked upon as a totally different ballgame. And as you're aware, it's also just sort of a different professional sort of, I guess the ethos of why someone would get involved is also very different. I think a lot of people who teach English, that's usually not, what they majored in college, or that's not sort of their end goal. Whereas if you find a chemistry teacher, at most schools, they're a chemistry teacher. That's their plan 10, 20 years down the line.
Cool. And can you talk about what you teach?
Yeah, I am basically a master of none. I do a bunch of courses. I actually didn't mention one of my courses earlier just to save time. Yeah, that's nice ozeki, man. I miss sake. Although you can get good sake here. I guess I just don't take advantage of that. We're close. We're close to Korea.
In
Close to
Korea,
Japan.
yeah, I imagine you get plenty of good Japanese things, right?
It's not bad. Yeah, it's it's better probably than finding stuff over there.
Yeah, well, I go
But,
to the H Mart in Austin, Texas. And apparently, that's a nationwide Asian supermarket or Korean supermarket, but they got Japanese stuff, Chinese stuff. They got the goods.
Oh, I didn't know Austin would. I guess Austin's a sort of the liberal bubble, right, of Texas, or so I hear.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's that, but it's more so the industry that's here. It's like a booming tech industry here. So it's a lot of people from California, from the tech scene, are coming over here now, creating startups or working at big companies like Facebook or Amazon, or Tesla's coming down here too. So there's a lot of these like major Silicon Valley players that are in Austin now, but there's also a ton of startups. And that includes a lot of Asian people, I would say. Not going to say why.
This is growing
we'll just leave it at that.
Well, yeah, I guess it sort of reflects the demographic of Silicon Valley, huh?
Yeah, you could say that. Oh yeah, you can get real Chinese food in Austin. I was surprised by that. There's like legit, it's not the General Tso's chicken, which I love. It's not that though. It's like proper Chinese food.
Yeah, it's that's a whole nother conversation to have, right, about Panda Express and whatnot. But I guess we don't have to get into that now.
No, yeah, we can get back to your curriculum, I guess. So you said you're a jack of all trades, but I mean, I think you have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things. You've been teaching for a while too. So can you talk about what you do with your students typically? Like what does your day look like when you're in the classroom?
Yeah, so I guess if I was to break down it's a 2-day cycle where 1 to 8 period school, so 1 to 4 on A days, 5 to 8 on B days. I guess I'll just spend a minute running it through so I don't bore the audience, but sort of 1 minute version of the 2 days would be 8 a.m. to 8:30 we have a grade 10 meeting. I'm part of the grade 10. And then 8:50 to 10:15, it's about 80 minutes. I have my first class, economics. And then I get about 2 hours off, including lunch. And then from 12:40, I'll have my second class debate. And that goes to about 2. And then I get another hour off. And these hours off, it depends on the teacher. Sometimes you have stuff to do and sometimes you have less stuff to do. And then from 3:30 to 4, business club meets. And then if I do have sports, which we don't right now, but most of the time I'd have a sports team from like 4:15 to 6, and I'm usually done at 6. So that's the first day. And the second day is very similar, except instead of having 2 breaks, I'd have 1 break. And I think my schedule follows the prototypical teacher, where you get about 2-3 hours off a day. You start the day at about 8. Although I guess I work maybe a bit later. I think most people get off at about 4:30, and then some people get off at 6. So when it comes to work-life balance, it's definitely very present in this occupation. No one's working till 7, 8, or 2 a.m. like those poor guys at Tesla.
Yeah, for sure. So when you got that 2-hour lunch break, are you a big lunchtime nap guy?
Well, lunch, it's like it depends on what my lunch schedule really varies. Sometimes I will leave to go eat lunch. So in that case, I just pretty much leave and come back, and that's it. Like, you know what I mean? There's just no time for anything. And when I do eat in my classroom, I wouldn't say I nap, but I mean, there's definitely a bit more that leaves me with a bit more time to, work on my own projects or, grade stuff. It's lunch. So, I mean, if it's an hour lunch and I spend 10 minutes eating, I do take a liberty and, try to do my own thing. Cause sometimes I get in a bad habit of just working the whole time, and then I kind of burn out. So, Yeah. That'd be my short answer.
Now, one thing about at least the schools that we went to growing up, it was very nice, friendly place, I would say. Like, there wasn't a lot of bullying. There wasn't a lot of crime. There may be a little bit here and there, but it wasn't such a big deal. But I know a bunch of people who teach at international schools in Shanghai, and they're not really that international. Most of the students are Chinese, and they're like rich kids. And a lot of the time, they're bad kids. They're rich kids that get into a lot of bad behavior. I mean, I heard some weird stories, like young girls, like 14-year-old girls with like an inner thigh tattoo, like inappropriate stuff like this that's on display at school. And how did she even get that? Who's she involved with? Who's giving her tattoos at such a young age? So a lot of, like, you could say bad kids or kids with troubled pasts or something. Would you say there's something like that in Korea? Is there any similarity there?
I cannot say what the demographics or sort of the inside situation are for sort of the lesser desirable schools. So yeah, I'm honestly not sure, because I know Seoul has the most schools, to no surprise. Again, depending on who you're asking, some will say there's 8 schools there, others will say there's 16. So I imagine maybe when you get to that sort of lower rung of the 16th school, the 18th school, perhaps you do start to sort of attract a demographic where perhaps people have chosen, or the parents have chosen for them that route because public school, they're probably kicked out of public school and there's nowhere else to go. But yeah, I don't think it's something unique to Shanghai. I think it's sort of the folly of the privatized system, right? Where you have schools like the one we went to. I would say the school I work at now too is like that too, where there's just I wouldn't say there's no bullying, but again, kind of just when you compare it to the stories you hear from teachers in the United States, it's just like I think just the law is a bit more draconian, and that helps. I can recall maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a kid bullying another kid, and the consequence was he was actually expelled. It wasn't like, he's got 5 days detention or 3 days suspension. So I know these schools take discipline quite seriously.
What kind of bullying are we talking about?
It was, I can't get into the details due to, privacy reasons, but it was something that I would say with a fair bit of confidence that if it was going on at a any given private or public institution like high school in the United States, it would at worst merit a week or 2 suspension, not an expulsion. So definitely discipline is taken quite seriously, and I think as a result, though, on the positive end, it harbors, as you're saying, a very sort of positive atmosphere. I think sort of toxic individuals are sort of weeded out. And, that's a whole other conversation to have too, in regards to, rehabilitation and restorative justice, which I'm not necessarily against. But at the same time, I think if the average student is a victim, I think we do have to prioritize. If you have certain students who are just creating a very negative environment for learning, it's a private school. So at the end of the day, the school has a choice to, keep students.
So you're saying if a student just, every day strangling people in the hallways, they're not going to last very long.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Start strangling people.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, you'll probably be gone.
Sounds very reasonable. All right. Did you ever get bullied growing up?
I don't know if it would constitute as bullying. I think it would be unfair to people who are actually bullied. I just remember there was, we probably would have been in high school at the same time. I remember there was a senior who would always throw a tennis ball at my head, and it would sometimes hit me, but that was about it.
You gonna name him? You gonna drop his name right
here?
No,
I'll I just it's public, so I'll refrain. I'll tell you. I'll tell you privately.
Okay.
But yeah, there was,
we can pull up the Facebook page right here. I'm kidding. So we do have your YouTube page pulled up here, and let's talk about that, because you were actually a very big inspiration for me creating my show. I feel like I kind of copied you in a way, but to be very honest, I thought about doing something like this for a very long time, And the fact that you did it first kind of was like, oh, okay, this guy's doing it. It was almost like you opened the door a little bit more for my, I don't know, my feelings to accept doing it. And now I'm really into doing it. And I feel like this is just a way to have a social life, you know? I'm not seeing people in public that much, you know? So it's really nice to just be able to connect with people I know from way back, like you, but also meet new people like some of the other guests I've had on the show. And I have no idea where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
I forgot where I was going with. Oh, your podcast. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, why don't you talk about that? Like, what made you want to start this podcast, the Tokyo Alumni podcast, and how's it going?
So, first of all, thank you, for those very friendly words. It's great that I was able to inspire anyone. And hopefully, I mean, if I can do it, I really think anyone can. And, just sort of piggybacking on what you were saying, I was actually really sort of I'm not looking at Instagram or something right now. I'm looking at for the podcast. I was listening to one recently called Very Bad Wizards. And one point they made that was really sort of, it has stuck with me for the past few weeks, is they said, essentially, podcasting, like, and these guys are, pretty big. You have to be able to do stuff, whether people watch it or not. Right. And that's my similar mentality as you, it's a social, it helps me connect. I'm very much influenced from Joe Rogan in the sense that I just want to learn. So actually, I guess that already goes into sort of what you were asking, why do it? That was one of the reasons. I thought there was a lot of things to learn from other people. And you know how these parties go. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever been to like a alumni, gathering.
Well, I did get on an alumni Zoom thing last month. Not quite the same though. But I mean, I'd say the only alumni things I've done were the reunions, the class reunion, Vegas, baby, that kind of stuff.
Oh, you guys did Vegas. Yeah, we did Vegas too, but it happened to be Manny Pacquiao versus was it Floyd Mayweather. So it was like a grand a room, and this was still like when I was in my mid-20s, early 20s. I didn't go. But yeah, I mean, the main sort of underlining reason of why I started it was so going back to sort of the reunions, and we get these little what do you call them, like the newsletters, and they're great. I think actually, in fact, our alma mater has someone full time, and I've interacted with her a few times. A very pleasant lady, but I always felt like it was lacking. Like they would just sort of tell me like a paragraph, "Hey, so and so from class of '78, just wrote a book." It was like, cool, but it wasn't, it just wasn't enough depth. And when you talk to these people and you say, do you mind coming on for an hour? Almost all of them say yes. So, and actually not only that, but I would go as far to say a lot of these people, including myself, I've spoken to other people who, people recommended to me back when I was in business, and they would just talk to me. I remember there was a grad from the 80s. He's a CEO for some companies. I won't say his name, but back when I was doing the tutoring thing, this is prior to my teaching. Yeah, he just met up with me at a cafe for like an hour. And to this day, I kind of wish I had it recorded right on this digital sphere, because I felt guilty that he was giving me all this knowledge, a very successful businessman. And it was just to me. So yeah, I feel like I think Michael Thornton, who is a guest not too long ago, sort of summarized it well, where I'm trying to find a platform to archive basically all our experiences, because at the moment there really is no archive. There's just sort of word of mouth. What's Nathan Baker up to? I think he's in he's somewhere in the States, or maybe he's in China. Maybe he's in, Japan. I don't know. Right? There's a lot of word of mouth, though. I think someone started a business, or we get the one paragraph, where you say so-and-so wrote a book, and that's it. So, yeah, I was just trying to find a place where I could sort of get all our experiences, and not just the people who, are sort of what we would call, I can't think of any other word, even like successful, sort of like people have made it in certain industries. But I was like, I kind of want to hear about, what about the person who, had 3 kids? I mean, like they have something to share. What about the
Are
person,
you
who
saying
went
that
back
if
to?
they have 3 kids, they can't be really successful? No, I'm just playing. So what if they're a lawyer and they have 3 kids, Nicky? No. I know what you mean. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. But yeah,
Yeah.
somebody's maybe like a jet flying, limousine riding. They have their own business. Maybe they come from a rich family too. Who knows? But then there's somebody who's maybe doing something a bit more humble, and you want to talk to all of them.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like that was maybe the what I would call the blind spot of basically a lot of these alumni newsletters. And to be fair to them though, I mean the main ethos of a lot of that is, as we know, is money, right? It's like the colleges. I still get emails every month from both my high school and the several colleges I attended asking for money. So it sort of makes sense that they want to hone in on people who might be able to donate money to the school.
Yeah, I feel like the tuition costs so much. I don't feel like I need to donate anything now while I'm in my 30s, but I got to buy a house. I got other priorities. I don't feel like I can donate money to a school that charges how much money a year to students? A lot. But eventually, yeah, maybe I'll donate. If I can maybe do something that involves the theater or some kind of, or the AV club, or something where it's making an impact on a department of the school. I know like a lot of alumni do that sort of stuff. I think that's pretty cool. Like you're making a mark on the school, you're making it better, and it's not just throwing money at it.
Yeah, it's a great point to sort of have a more of a tangible impact on a specific organization. Because you're right, when it just goes to the school, I mean, you don't know what it's going to even be used for. So I'm actually surprised at how some schools, including colleges, try to sort of, I don't even know if it's called leveraging their position because they're not really in any position to leverage, but they ask for money every month. To this day, since I graduated Berkeley, they've asked, and yeah, I've never donated to my college because I feel like my donation was my out of state tuition, which is about triple the in state student. So
Yeah, and you got it repped on your LinkedIn. They're getting a little exposure on the LinkedIn page there. They should pay you for that. But anyway,
I don't know about that.
so you like to talk to alumni, and it's not even just people that we went to school with at the American School in Japan. You talk to alumni from other schools in Tokyo, or do you just do Japan? I know it's called Tokyo Alumni Podcast, but do you actually cover the whole Japan scene when it comes to the alumni?
To be honest, there's not that many outside of Tokyo. There's Hokkaido International School. The biggest probably in the West is Canadian Academy. But once you include Osaka Senri, Canadian Academy, outside of Tokyo, I do kind of cheat though. I do include the Kanto Plains. So it is Tokyo Alumni Podcast in name, but I always forget technically YS, St. Moore. I had a guy on from Yokota, Kinnick, I mean. Yeah,
Cool.
those are
Hey,
technically not Tokyo.
explain that for a second, because there's all these schools, Kanto Plain schools. There's a Canadian school out there. Then there's the American school in Japan and Tokyo. There's some Catholic schools in Tokyo. But then there's a school like Yokota. What's Yokota?
Yeah, so there is a totally separate system called the DODS, the DODS, the Department of Defense Schools. And those schools are completely separate in the sense that kind of like how embassies are effectively not owned by the local country, right? The moment you join, you're part of the embassy, it's owned by that country. In a similar sense, these schools are often on bases. So they really are sort of truly American in the sense that they're actually on American soil. And of course, with the history that Japan has with the United States, there's many military bases. In Okinawa, there's Kubasaki, Kadena, and up north we have like Aomori. And near where we were in Tokyo, the major ones were Kinnick, Yokota. What am I missing? Zama. Yeah, so all these schools are DODs. They're all kids who are kids of, I guess, what would be known as army brats, right? So their parents are some type of, they're some type of military personnel. And usually they're not just your average foot soldiers. They're usually like in some sort of upper echelon because they're, they're getting these whole packages where their kids are able to attend these schools, and these schools are totally different. They're much more Americanized. I think it really depends on the school. I just know, at least from the teacher side, my understanding is that once you get in the system, you basically can pretty much you can relocate from country to country, and some of the DOD schools just pay very well, especially if you're an American citizen. And it's very has that American, quote unquote feeling. I know nowadays it's a little different with, you mentioned the Korean supermarket. It's just much easier to find international food, right? And vice versa. You can find, American food in Japan. But 20, 30 years ago, when, pre-internet, or I guess there was internet, but, when the internet was less, rampant, and during that era, my understanding was it was much easier to be a DODS teacher because, you just had all these American things around you, and you were getting paid pretty well for a teacher.
Yeah, they had some big kids at those schools because I played football at ASIJ, American School in Japan. And we played against those army schools or those military schools. The Navy, like you mentioned, Kinnick, that's the Navy base, right? Or is Yokosuka?
So. I confused
What's Kinnick?
Yokosuka.
Kinnick's the Air Force?
I think it's... there was Yokosuka, Kinnick, and then I think Yokota.
Oh, right.
Yeah, one is Navy, one is Air Force.
And they had those big boys at Zama. Real big boys. And for shame,
Zama,
we kicked their ass in football all the time. We always kick Zama's ass. We always kick their ass. Now, Yokota, the Air Force base, they beat us a lot. So we'll be fair. But these are supposed to be military kids. They're going to get beat by a bunch of preppy expat brats in downtown Tokyo who go to Gas Panic on the weekend. They're going to get their ass kicked by those kids. That was the reality. That's how it was.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point of American football, which it continues to be a real sales point, is my understanding, for schools like ASIJ, because I've been around the world now, and I don't know how many schools have American football programs. And I guess you are fortunately or unfortunately, I guess depending on how you perceive it, part of that system. And I wasn't. I was actually a runner. We were just running in the mountains. So fortunately, I didn't have to encounter any of those monstrously strong and fast.
I gotta say,
athletes from Yokota.
A lot of them were big and soft. We were able to handle them. At least those Army kids. Those Army kids were real big. Yeah. I think it's because they had Taco Bell in that base. These kids were spoiled with fast food, and it ended up being, to their detriment. They couldn't compete with a bunch of preppy expat brats like you and me. Well, you weren't on the football team, but you could have been. There were a lot of not so big guys. I was not very big. I was a lineman. Yeah. I'm bigger now, but it may not be muscle mass. That's what's grown. Yeah.
It's definitely ASIJ's unique color, though, and that's something I'm still very sort of. It does put a smile on my face when I see those pictures of American football. It's like, and it does sort of blow people's minds. They see pictures of high school kids playing American football, and they're like, "What? This is in Tokyo." And
I don't think you
fond memories, man.
I don't think you get that in Shanghai. I don't think they had football teams. They might have had some really, really preppy stuff like polo or something at that Concordia. I don't know. I never worked there. I never sent my kid there. I can't say that, but.
Well, if I'm sort of going to extrapolate on that point, though, I think a point that I neglected to mention is there are British schools, there are Australian schools, right? There are Canadian schools, and then there's American schools. And that, too, is a very interesting sort of differentiation of the schools, because you do have schools that are also just sort of quote unquote international, where you literally have, the same number of British people and Americans, and then you have reasonable size of Aussies. But then you do have a lot of schools, and this is just it's my bias, but it's based upon a lot of facts. So I'm pretty confident this information is accurate. I feel like if you're British, you could work in a lot of the American systems. Actually, ASIJ would be a good example. There were a lot of English teachers, and but vice versa. If you find like a truly English school, like St. Christopher's is a big one in Bahrain. It was near where I worked. The qualification was you needed an English teaching certificate. So as sort of a, as a Yankee, I was always a little bit bitter about that. That I felt like as the English can sort of, navigate in the American system, international school system, and the British system. Whereas if you're an American, you were, I think there were paths into the British schools, but it was definitely much more narrow.
And you know what this reminds me of is the AP system versus the IB system. So I'll just tell a little story. So at ASIJ, we had the AP system, which is the advanced placement. It's American, yeah. And then there's the IB system, International Baccalaureate. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and then a lot of these, I guess it's international schools that use IB, but it's a lot of the more British-oriented, British culture, I would say, British culture-style schools. So I went to South Africa. This was like into my halfway through junior year, going to South Africa. And I had no chance to join the IB program because I didn't start at the beginning of junior year. IB is a 2-year program, whereas if I was at ASIJ, I just take AP stats as a senior, like a guy who's bad at math, I could just join whenever, 1 year, another year, it didn't matter. IB was so restrictive. Can you talk a little bit about these two programs? What are the differences? What's better? What's worse, in your opinion?
Yeah, so those are the two major ones. Of course, the British schools do often offer A levels, and I think it's NGSEs. I can't remember the exact acronym. But yeah, the IB has sort of become the primary modality of teaching in most schools. I mean, just looking at Tokyo, I would say probably 70% of the schools are IB. And the IB is a relatively new, curriculum. And the ideas, and again, I'm not an IB teacher, so I'm just sort of talking based on what my friends have told me. The idea is sort of an emphasis on skill over content. So for example, if you're taking a history class in the IB system, the emphasis is, can you dissect primary sources? Can you write an essay? Can you use evidence in a proper manner to, back up your points? Whereas in the AP, the emphasis might be a little bit heavier on the content. So if you're taking APUSH, for example, I mean, you should know that, Jefferson was the second president, and you should know that, name 3 reasons why the United States joined World War II or something like that. So, and obviously there's still a big overlap. The IB, if you've ever seen the IB econ curriculum, for example, the content is heavy. And of course, vice versa. I mean,
they teach you about the lizard people, right? They really get into that, huh?
I don't recall any lizard people, but
I'm just playing.
But it is definitely more philosophical if that's the jab that you're trying to make towards IB.
No, I was just doing a little silly conspiracy theory name drop. That's all. Something that, of course, they wouldn't teach. But yeah, go on. Sorry, I interrupted.
I mean, I think that just about summarizes. I think there's the difference, but I guess sort of connecting it to employment, which I think is an issue that you also wanted to talk about. It goes back to the whole joke of, do you have 2 years? Oh, you don't have 2 years. Okay, can't work. Because the sort of the global modality of education is shifting to IB. For if you're hunting for jobs and you don't have IB experience, that is going to definitely count against you. And I definitely, I've been at my current school for 7 years, and we have a good, 15% or so leave every year. So I've seen sort of the different paths people have taken. And yeah, if a teacher, my school's not IB, by the way, if a teacher didn't have IB prior to coming to my school, it's definitely very hard to sort of break into that IB school system without the experience. So, I mean, in that sense, sort of to expand upon that more, it's definitely a club. And I don't know how many other industries work in that way. My understanding is a lot do, right? Guys from Facebook go to Twitter, and guys from Twitter go to, not Parler, that's gone now. Go to.
Hey man, they're gonna get. Okay, American big tech has pushed Parler to depend on the Russians for freedom. Well, anyways, I don't want to get into my politics. That's not what this show is about. But you brought up Parler.
Yeah, I feel like I just very inadvertently went into a minefield there. But you know what I mean. The Twitter, Facebook. It's the same thing with the banks. You work at Morgan Stanley and then you work at Goldman Sachs. It's like there's only about 3-4 other banks you're going to work at. You're not going to suddenly go to, the Bank of Chiba, like out of nowhere. It's in a similar sense, I think, with schools. You have the top schools. Once you're in, you're sort of rotating within that. And then similarly, if you can get into, the medium schools, it's a similar thing. A lot of people sort of rotate. And of course, there's a little bit of, vertical mobility between the schools as well. So, I mean, I would say to anyone who is interested in the international school system, I think the most difficult part is the first 2 years. I think once you get your first 2 years in, once you do your hard work, we have a mutual friend. I'm not going to bring his name up, but he, for example, had to go to South America. I know it's a country that he didn't really highly desire. He didn't speak any Spanish, which is very difficult. Anyone will tell you to live in South America. But he did his 2 years, man. He did his 2 years, and then he got a job that he liked a little bit more in Asia. And now once he finishes that 2 years, he's now going to go to a job that he's a bit more, where I would say I hate the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 because it's very subjective. But it's not a tier 3 school. He's going to a tier 1, 2 school. So I'm very happy about that.
And I know who you're talking about. And he was on your show. So didn't he talk about this on the show? You should plug your show right now. You should plug that episode. What's his name?
I don't know if I want to plug that episode.
Oh, well, there was a tech issue. There was a tech issue in that episode, right? Like he had to change locations.
It was a tech issue. And I'm sure you feel similar. I feel like every time I see a previous episode, or especially now, I'm 58 episodes in and I see anything from the first 20, I'm just like, why is your background like that? Or, why is your, sound off? And, there's obviously things I'm still working on. And as you do too, I imagine. So, if anything's like more than 30 episodes ago, I feel very self-conscious about sort of my lack in communication skills.
Well, I have this very loud gaming PC laptop that blows its fan, and you can hear it right now. It's just humming. I go on mute when you're talking, just so people don't have to listen to it. So yeah, I got my own tech issues, dude. I was gonna do it for my car tonight, but I had a tech issue with that. I don't need to get into that on the air. It's a little boring. Now to switch topics, one of the things I love about being an expat is all the weird people I meet overseas. There's so many strange people that go overseas. Maybe I'm one of them. Maybe. And how about you? What's the weirdest encounter you've had with a unusual expat, a character, if you will?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people can empathize that, who are abroad. You do meet a variety of types of people. And I thought about this question because you mentioned this in the pre-interview. And I came up with one, Brian Derryberry IV. And Brian Derryberry IV was this backpacker that he came, and this was back when I was in Honduras. So in Honduras, because it was kind of a more junior school, even though it was, one of the better schools in Honduras, the housing, for example, where I live now, you obviously get your own place, but at the newer schools, you get roommates, like college style. So like I had a little house with this guy, Brian Albrecht, a great guy. He was one of my best men at our groomsmen at my wedding. And he liked to have couch surfers at our house. And I did not mind that. It was interesting meeting people. And this guy was traveling through. It was him and his girlfriend and a dog, a very cute dog. They stayed for about a week. And then this is Honduras, by the way, at the height of its crime rate, where it surpassed Somalia. So I think it surpassed Mogadishu during my time there. So it's a very dangerous place. And he comes back maybe like a month later. We come back from work and he's just sitting in front of our house. Just wait. And back then we had like a padlock. It was a very sort of ghetto like way we had things. And his wife's not, or his girlfriend's not there. His dog's not there. And he's crying. And he's like, I was robbed. Like they took everything. And I don't even know where my girlfriend or my dog is. We're like, crap. Okay, come in. And he sticks around for about 4 or 5 days. We talk to him a bit. We give him a little bit of money too. Give him some food. And then I think about the 4th or 5th day, I come back from work and he's not there. And I used to keep in the top drawer of my desk a few $100, like American dollars. I look in there, money's gone. So then and instead there's a little letter there. And it's like this real long letter that says like, you guys have been so nice to me. You're really good friends, but I need to go sort of find myself and I need some money. I promise I'll pay you back. And spoiler alert, I've never got that money back. And I have emailed him a few times, but no response. So to this day, I do not know what happened to Brian Derryberry IV.
Did you send
I still have his email.
Did you send him a very strongly worded email?
I actually went down memory lane this morning. I have not looked at when the last time I messaged him, and it actually wasn't. It was very much like I messaged him once a few months later saying, "Hey, I hope you're alive. In your letter you said you took like $70, but I'm pretty sure you took $200. I'd appreciate it if you could pay me back sometime, now or in a few years." And then I messaged him again a few years later, just saying like, "Are you still alive?" And then that was it. That was probably about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, the last time I messaged him.
The thing that gets me about this story is that he's a fourth. Anybody with a fourth, I think two things, and this actually kind of works out. One, that they're very rich, and he's the fourth. He's the fourth generation. He's got that old money. The other is, I don't want to say the G word, but he might be like a traveling trickster type. Like that show, The Riches. You ever see that show, The Riches? With that one dude who's like a transvestite and the comedian, the British guy Eddie Izzard. Well, it's a pretty good show, but it's about traveling con artists.
Yeah.
So why he was a fourth? Was he royalty? What was he?
My understanding is you don't have to be a fourth to be a fourth. I think as long as you go to the DMV and you say you're a fourth, you're a fourth. So my theory is actually that he's just sort of from a demographic that is perhaps something lower than middle class, and either his parents were very unique, and he embraced that uniqueness. And I think that would be the weirdest guy, just because there were other things about him too. He had tattoos everywhere. I know a lot of people have tattoos everywhere, but he's one of those guys that had like face tattoos. And again, he was a nice guy. Like he was, very sincere about everything else. Like we would offer him things and he would say no all the time. So that's why I was kind of surprised, if he was really going to go all out as a con artist, we were gone all day. So, I mean, it wouldn't have been that hard for him to take a few other things, but he didn't take anything else. He just took, the $200, maybe it was $170 or whatever, left a letter, and that was it. Never heard of him again. And we never had backpackers after that.
So he looks like a SoundCloud rapper who does a lot of Xanax. He's a white guy, I assume?
White guy, yeah.
White guy, yeah. I mean, you don't get a lot of fourths that aren't white, I think. Maybe. I could be wrong. So he's got a lot of face tattoos. Yeah. He's a fourth. And I think you're looking at him and you're like, okay, this guy looks dodgy. But he's a fourth. We can trust him. We can trust him with everything. I went to college with a guy who was a third. And he was from a very rich family, as you would expect. He dropped out of college, bought an apartment in the French Quarter in New Orleans. Real nice spot. I went down there one time. I don't know what I think he's making art or something now. But, that's what a third can do. They can go buy a nice little spot in the French Quarter and just do art for the rest of their life, maybe. Sorry, man. And if you're listening,
the question is, did you name your son Nathan Baker the second?
No.
You missed the chance now, man. You missed the chance to see a third.
You're right, I did. But no, I gave him a very unique name. I'm not going to dox my son on the air. But if you know me, you probably know my son's name. Send me an email, expatsonair@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Anyways.
That's Brian Derryberry.
A little bit of sake tonight, We're keeping it super casual. I thought, okay, I got an old high school classmate from Japan, half Japanese, half American, half Japanese, half white. He's a Hapa. We haven't had a Hapa on the show yet. I'm glad we do now.
Oh, am I the first?
You're
nice.
The first Hapa, yeah.
Yes.
We've had mostly men on the show. We've had one lady. We'll get more. Don't worry. I'm not discriminating. Just women, reach out, please. I'm not trying to be creepy. I'm just trying to say, hey, come on the show, talk about your experience. But anyways, Nick, I'm digressing. Now, you talked about the weirdest expat, the fourth. How about the weirdest experience you've had, other than, this getting robbed by a backpacker with face tattoos?
Well, in Honduras, there are two, I would say, and one was, and I think I need to sort of preface it with a little bit of background, which I actually previously mentioned how prior to going to Honduras, it was literally 3 months before I, landed there. That's when it surpassed Mogadishu as the most dangerous city in the world. And there's just article after article after article about, the narco wars. And, I think Breaking Bad was pretty big still back then. And like, I'm emailing my principal like once every 2 weeks saying, are you sure? I can go, sure. Okay. And so I end up there. And then sure enough, like my first week there, I'm walking out of my apartment and then I hear pop, 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 pop. It's so loud. Like, and my heart, like, your heart raises and it goes down, but it was a level I've never felt before of adrenaline. Like, and I've been pretty high adrenaline before, like 100-meter track race, right? Right before that bang sound, you are pumped, but it was like multiply that by 10. So I just jump behind a car and I am like, like hiding down. And then I look up, from the tire, and then I notice it's the kids across the street playing with fireworks, like really, really loud fireworks. So that's when I realized that maybe things weren't as bad. But then in the same week, there was a shooting at the mall about 3 minutes from my house. So I don't know if that's the weirdest story, but I think at least from my personal experience, it sounds stupid, but for about, 7-8 seconds, I was convinced that like, this was it. This is your time, man. Like something's going to happen. Like you might get shot in the leg, whatever. So that was definitely something.
Yeah, I wanted to laugh when you're like, and then there was a shooting the next week or the same week. But that's pretty dark. And you really kind of brought that moment into life there. You were like ducking behind your mic. We had like the 3D sound of you ducking behind the car. Dude, that's scary as hell, though. So, I mean, starting as an international school teacher, you had to kind of earn your keep, and you went to one of these countries that was very dangerous, more dangerous than Somalia at the time, according to experts. So, is that something you would recommend? Like, if you're trying to get started in this business of international schools, you want to be a teacher, should you go to World War III and teach?
Yeah, that's a great question, man, because it's all relative to age. And I tell my wife this all the time, because I'm 34 now, which is relatively junior because my industry is, quite old. It's not like the tech industry that's quite young. But even now, like, as I look, to my next occupation, which will be in a few years from now, it's like a lot of places have been crossed off the map. Because of things like security, safety, and in that sense, so going back to what you were saying, because you do need to earn your keep early on, I think if you're in your 20s, I would just say go for it, because there's a lot of things I do cherish. In Honduras, for example, almost all the faculty were in their 20s. So it was almost like an episode of like, I was going to say Merlot's place, but that's the one where everyone has romantic relationships, which actually people did have romantic relationships. It wasn't quite like that dramatic. Like it was just like a fraternity, basically. It was like fraternity and sororities. Like it was just like everyone was in their 20s. We'd all go out with each other and like for party, not dating. And so like those experiences I cherish to this day. But with that said, I don't think it is a necessity. So, for example, my current occupation, I do have a colleague who I spend a lot of time with him because we also run together. And this is his second international post. But his first international post was in Seoul and now here. And he came with kids. So I think, he made the right choice. I think with kids, as you would know, being a father yourself, it's very hard to bring a child to a place that, is the murder capital of the world. Whereas in my case, it was just me.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, if something happens, it happens. And
Damn.
yeah, I mean, I want to say about half of the faculty were robbed during my 2 years there,
It sounds like
and
there should have been
most
a lot
at
more
gunpoint.
romance. You know, every week you're fearing for your life. You want to hold somebody tight at night, make you feel safe, make you feel warm. But there
Um,
wasn't. Are you sure? Are you just not sharing? Are you trying to hold back?
no, actually, I mean, what I could say is, if you compare it to a school, it's like ASIJ, where we were, teachers weren't dating each other, if you know what I mean. Whereas, like, where I was, it
Oh,
wasn't uncommon. Oh,
wait, wait,
okay,
wait.
they were.
Was
There
that a
were some.
dig? Because I've seen some. Okay, I don't want to give ASAJ a bad name. I'm not going to say it, but I've seen some
Mm,
funny stuff. Funny stuff go on there when I was in school. It seemed like, oh, that's weird, and then you grow up and you're
mm,
like, well, that was kind of messed up. But I don't want to give them a bad name. There was one employee who nobody respected
mm,
anyway. I won't get into it.
mm.
Maybe you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
it's all
about.
fair
Maybe you
stuff.
don't.
All fair stuff. But yeah, I would say compared to, these schools where the average teacher is 40, obviously there definitely was, there were things going on that probably wouldn't. But again, in hindsight, and of course, hindsight's 2020, right? Um, I appreciate those years. It definitely has made me a better teacher, having taught 3 years in Bahrain. And that's actually another place. It's not as much of a story, but the Arab Spring just happened to coincide with my tenure there. So, just I had students who went to jail, who were at the protest, and they were Shiites. And for those who aren't familiar, Bahrain was one of those countries where I believe it's 20% Sunni, 80% Shia, yet it was controlled by the 20% minority. And that was a lot of that is ingrained, based on British colonial history. And yeah, I had students that just disappeared. They never came back. I mean, I was only there for a year, but it's like so and so's gone. And
See
I
the
only heard a few
world.
weeks later.
You're living history. You got to experience the narco wars, the Arab Spring. So you've seen a lot. Korea, though, you're seeing a lot of. Well, Jeju looks like a beautiful
Mm.
place, and what I know about it is a lot of Chinese tourists would go there. It was very easy for Chinese folks to travel over there, without visas or what have you. Were there special rules for them? Can you talk a little bit about that, like the tourism industry in Jeju?
Yeah, so that's why actually the semi-autonomous status really sort of helped the tourist industry here. And normally, my understanding is for Chinese nationals, it's pretty hard to go anywhere really outside of China. But with Jeju, yeah, it was just a zero visa deal. One flight, a good 5, 6 major Chinese cities are 2, 3 hours away. So huge industry. Obviously, this is all pre-COVID. I know COVID's changed everything, but for example, just 15 minutes from my house here, there's this beautiful large casino, that looks like something you would find in, a place that is a bit more metropolitan. But that was built based upon Chinese investors.
Chinese casino in Jeju Island. Is it very sleazy, or is it classy?
Oh, it's classy. It's beautiful. I've only been there once. But yeah, I feel like it's sort of an embodiment of sort of the Chinese investment on this island, right? Because if you're a Korean national, you can't even go to the casino. So I'm pretty sure, and
Wait,
again,
wait, wait, wait. Why can't you go?
you can't gamble if you're Korean. So all the patrons are just foreign nationals, mostly Chinese. Some teachers from the area, right? If you bring your passport and you're a UK citizen, American citizen, you can go. And I think that has definitely been right now, or not right now. I think they just finished building. Again, Jeju is not a huge island, right? We have about 1 million people, maybe 400,000 up in our capital, and they built like a 50-floor building, like Chinese investors. So it's a love hate relationship, like any place that's a tourist destination. Where on one hand, people like the dollars, right? Or I guess in that case, it would be the what's the currency in China?
Renminbi.
The RB,
RMB, yeah. Yeah.
RNB, RNB,
Chinese yuan. There's
money.
multiple names for it, so it's confusing.
Yeah, so people are welcoming of that, but on the other hand, it's sort of the gentrification and not only from Chinese investors, but it's an island where there's a lot of people from Seoul and the mainland, have their second house here. So my understanding is that it's sort of been always sort of this juxtaposition of we can gain, a lot from having tourists. You can sell more things, and then on the other hand, well, property values are going up, and if you happen to not own a house here, you're probably not going to be able to buy a house in some of these cities on a fisherman's salary.
Damn. Have you bought any property or anything like that overseas?
No, I've never bought any properties. I do have a friend who's purchased a house here, and I'm not sure how much you've talked about this on your podcast. I've only seen the first one and a little bit of the last one, but that's a whole interesting topic too, right? How some countries you can't even buy anything, right? I think if you're like Thailand, I think you need to be maybe they changed it, but I remember it used to be you needed to have a permanent residency or like a Thai national wife.
Oh yeah, I've known some suckers in China who had Thai wives, and they were funding the houses that they were buying. That they thought that would be their house, and then the wife takes it with her family and kicks the foreigner out. And he was wow. This guy was born a sucker though. This guy, I tell you what, this guy had it coming. He wasn't very bright, but yeah, that's something that happens. Be careful.
Yeah, big investments, I think, especially when you're outside of your sort of home nation, it does have sort of it does definitely cause a bit of anxiety, I believe, and worry, because again, you're playing ball in a different stadium, right? It's just away turf.
Yeah, this is a Canadian guy, older fella, overweight, not very handsome, not very charming, not very charismatic. Not very fun to hang around with, just as a friend or a coworker. He was kind of, Winnie the Pooh. There's Eeyore, right? The donkey. He was kind of like Eeyore. I
recall Eeyore, yes.
Yeah. So, and he was required to have a Skype call with his wife every night, his Thai wife every night. But she made him live in China. She's like, no, we're building the house. You need to go work. You're not getting a good job in Thailand. You got to go to China. Making 5,000 RMB a month. It's not even that much money. And this guy can't go out and party with us because he's got to talk to his wife on Skype. And then later, she just took everything, and he was out on his own. So
wow,
poor guy. Yeah,
that is all too common story, I guess, with certain areas. But yeah, in short, yeah, I haven't invested in any property, and properties.
I like I went back to that. Yeah, I've not bought any property.
Yeah, I don't have too much of content to to deliver in regards to real estate.
Fair enough. Hey, so you're half Japanese, half American, obviously, and I want to do the big announcement for how many Mr. Worldwides you get. So how many countries have you lived in total?
5, yes.
All right,
5
so
countries.
We're gonna do something special. So we counted as however many foreign countries you lived in, that's how many Mr. Worldwides you get. And if it's more than 5, you just get 5 Mr. Worldwides. You're a special case because you're a Japanese citizen and an American citizen. You're a dual citizen.
Yeah.
What do you feel like more? You feel more Japanese? You feel more American?
That's a good question, man. I know everyone sort of struggles with this question. I mean, I'd have to go with American at this point, just because I work at my occupation as sort of the American, Nick Harris, right? I teach in English and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's certain things about Japan and certain things about me, as you may be familiar, that are very Japanese. But
wait, like what?
Yeah.
What about you is very Japanese?
It's actually quite, it's not that interesting, but just stuff like I read, I read in Japanese. I watch TV shows in Japanese. I grew up with Japanese TV too. So that was a big difference, while the rest of you guys were watching, I don't know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But, okay, I did watch a little bit of Buffy
I didn't
the Vampire
watch that.
Slayer. But
I knew it was, my wife watched that. She loved that, but no, that wasn't for me. I liked the movie. I didn't like the show. Sarah Michelle Gellar, she didn't do it for me. Yeah, I don't know.
That was our generation, man. But yeah, while people are doing that, I was just watching, your average, bang average. They call it variety show. And if you remember that, and
for sure.
Just random shows like that, and mannerisms too, right? There's certain mannerisms I have that are very, Japanese. I tend to sort of like bow, a lot. So yeah, there's elements of Japanese, but definitely American. But I would bargain with you because I come from 2 countries, right? And I've lived in 3 foreign countries. I would go with probably 3.5. I would count, Japan as a half.
Well, I think you get 4. You get 4 Mr. Worldwides.
Or 4.
Straight up. Wait, hold on. We gotta do the jam. I don't make the rules, but we have to celebrate 4 countries, man.
Nice.
Congratulations. But yeah, we'll count Japan just because it's a special situation. 4 Mr. Worldwides. Pretty good. I haven't had 5 on yet, though. Oh, no, I did. Last episode, one of the guys was a 5, but they wouldn't let me get a word in. They just kept talking, so I didn't even have a chance to do the big Mr. Worldwide thing. Not that people really care that much.
Did you say they as in like a multiple people, or?
Yeah. The last episode was another Japan-centric episode, you could say. Excuse me. I got terrible allergies right now, man. The cedar in Austin, so I've been very nasally on the shows. My nose is running right now. It's terrible. But yeah, the last episode, you should check it out. It's there's a dude who lives in a little island near Shikoku. It's like a small little island over there, inland island. And he has like a self-sustaining community. They do like DIY electric grids, putting up solar panels with DIY battery kits. And it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, Shikoku's. I'm sure you're similar. I never had a chance to travel much in Japan, so there's this whole other part that I'm like, no idea. Yeah.
I did go down there with my wife a number of years ago, before my son was born. We went to a little island. I forgot the name of it, but it's like Bunny Island. It's like full of rabbits.
Is it the one with it has the what do you call it, tori, or big orange thing?
Well, it's just full of rabbits. It's just famous for rabbits. It's Bunny Island. Let me try to pull this up.
Bunny Island. Yeah.
So okay, you haven't actually traveled around Japan that much?
Not that much. No, it's and this is something I think people would find quite interesting. Is similar to Africa, the travel in Japan is so expensive. Right, to go from the east to the west, it's $300, and you could go to South Korea for $200. You could go to Vietnam and Thailand for $450. So a lot of people are just, if you're gonna pay $300 to go to Osaka, might as well pay $450 and go to Bangkok. Oh wow!
Yeah, a lot of Bunny Island. It's quite cool. I'd recommend going there. There's like a nice little hotel. They got like a onsen. They got like a little buffet for breakfast. There's just rabbits everywhere. You can buy rabbit food. Go feed them. It's very cute. Very family friendly. I recommend it.
Yeah, it looks really interesting. I think my wife would enjoy that. Although it seems a bit intimidating when that many.
Oh, you're afraid of a few rabbits? No. They're very sweet animals. But yeah, if you go to Hiroshima, you can take a train. Not too long. It's like maybe 1 or 2 hours, and then you get on a little ferry. Okay. You're on the island. Spend the weekend there. It's nice.
I really envy that you've had that opportunity. I mean, I made it to Osaka, but I think people often forget that Japan, we put it in this one big category, but it's so different, right? Like being in, especially like northern Japan, it's just a different ball game compared to Tokyo. So it's just like, I know people who have never been to Japan want to visit, and I always struggle to really sort of provide the, adequate advice, right? I mean, what do you say when someone says, hey, I'm going to Japan for 5 days? And I just kind of like, I'm like, there's a lot of places.
Dude, and I get some friends who spent some time in Japan, but not in Tokyo, but they visited Tokyo. Dude, a lot of people hate Tokyo. And I loved, we lived there. I mean, I loved it because it was, being a teenager there was great. Spent 5 years there. I love going back to visit. But I don't actually want to work there, personally. I don't want to live in Tokyo and work there unless I had a very relaxed business of my own or something. Maybe that I could live in Tokyo. But dude, it's a lot different from the rest of Japan. How would you describe the difference?
I think you summarized it pretty well. There's a lot of people who like to go to Tokyo for a short period, but living there is just a whole nother ball game. And I think unless you've been to, I've only visited, I've never lived, but I remember when I went to New York and London, those were the two places where I felt like, oh, this is like Tokyo. People are walking fast. Everyone is busy, busy, busy. People are also walking with purpose, if you know what I mean. I remember that's what shocked me about New York, is just everyone had a place they were going to, and they were trying to get there as fast as they can. But yeah, I think that's why, and it could be an age thing, right? As we get older, I feel like when you're younger, there's much more of that appeal for even, the most sort of heinous and dilapidated and nefarious institutions like gas panic may be appealing to a 17-year-old. But when you're older, yeah, it just kind of like, you want a little bit of nature, especially maybe when you have a family, you want parks. And Japan, Tokyo does have that element, but it's difficult, right? There's not as many parks as other places, and just
Yeah, I mean,
if you have a
they got some
2-year-old.
big parks, but you're living in this dense city. You're living in a little shoebox apartment like that. You're paying how much for every month? It's just a lot every day. It's just not relaxing. I just feel like it's not going to be a quality life like I would want in my. I'm not old. I'm in my 30s, but I'm liking being in America, man. The fresh air, because China, there's a lot more space than Japan, I would say, but it's a lot dirtier. The air is not clean. Same thing. If you're in Shanghai, there's not a lot of nature. You try to go to the park. If the pollution's too high, I don't take my son to the park. So it's like, I got to get out of here. I had to get some fresh air, some space.
That's an excellent point too and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about going to Honduras or not. So much of, I think, being an expatriate is contingent on your family situation, right? And it goes the same with, even if it's just you, no kids, you and a wife who is not working. There's certain areas that are very conducive to, I guess, what is known as, a trailing spouse, right? Where they can create a community and they can do things. And there's other areas where it's like, get me out of here.
Shout out my mom.
What?
No, you're talking about the trailing spouse, like whether they have communities. And that's like my mom, because my dad was an expat,
Yeah,
My mom wasn't working.
exactly.
She was very busy, though. She had a lot of activities.
Well, what did your mom do? Was she partak and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. But in Japan, she did a lot of things like ikebana, like flower arrangement. She did a lot of cultural activities, She had a great time. And there was school, if there were sports, she would be involved in that kind of stuff. But she was definitely that expat wife, You could have a reality show about those ladies.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tokyo. My understanding is it's a mixed bag, right? I've heard, from some mothers that it's very easy, right? Because it's a big city. If you want to, get American food, it's not too hard. Now there's a Costco or two, right? But at the same time, there is sort of that odd position where the bigger the city, sometimes the lonelier you can get, right? Because it's like there's only so many people in that city of, I don't know, 15 million people now. And I think for some Americans, that's a tough shift to make. Ride those trains, right? Ride the Chuo line all the way from Shinjuku to Missasakai. It's not easy if you're used to driving.
Yes, and you're explaining the route from downtown Tokyo to the school we went to, American School in Japan, which is way out in the suburbs. It's out in Chofushi. It's a little district outside of Tokyo. So you got to take the Chuo line, Shinjuku up to Musashi. Which one?
Sakai,
which Musashi?
Yeah.
Musashi Sakai.
Musasakai.
Dude.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm a bus person. You can tell. I don't remember the train station.
Yeah, you guys got to
get on another train. You got to get on another train after that, and then you got to walk like 10 minutes after that. So it's a journey if you're living in downtown Tokyo, and if you're going to the school or if you're working at the school.
And it's what you're used to, right? And that goes back to sort of the whole concept of your, podcast with Expat, where my wife, for example, is, Michigan born and bred. So, you drive places, right? That's just the thing, you don't walk 10 minutes, you don't walk 20 minutes. And so initially when she visited Tokyo a few times, I know that was a bit of a culture shock, okay, we're going to see a friend for dinner. Okay. And it's like walk 8 minutes to the station, get on the train, I get on the train for 10 minutes, change trains, get on the train for another 15 minutes, walk another 5 minutes, get to a restaurant, go, hey, Johnny, whatever, made up person, but you know what I mean? Whereas the States, it's like, oh, I got a dinner plans. Get in the car, 15 minutes, park, boom, you're there. So that difference, it's those small things, right? I think that really can add up.
For sure. Hey, so we're about an hour and 25 minutes. Do you have any place to be, or do you want to wrap it up soon, or can you keep going?
Not keep going. Yeah.
Cool.
No
cool. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, you're in Jeju now. You're in your 30s. Is there any kind of dream destination that you want to work at?
Yeah. So I think you bring up a great point of this so-called dream schools, or they used to be called lifer schools, but that term I think has sort of become obsolete because even at these sort of highly coveted schools, teachers are no longer staying there for their full tenure. And the reasons behind that, I'm not entirely sure. I think part of it is adventure. I think a good example, I know we keep going back to this, but it's sort of a nice base point is American School in Japan. I think is fairly uncontroversially the best school in Japan. And at least, the college acceptances as well as teacher salaries would indicate that. But then you might wonder, why do people leave? And I think part of it is, again, I think people, it sounds corny, but, you only live once, right? So no matter how much you like it there, once you're there for 15 years, I think a lot of teachers, at least their sort of mentality is, well, what can I do? What else can I do? I've been doing the same thing for 15 years. And of course, there's people that stay, and that's fine too. Sometimes you don't want to rock the boat. But going back to the question of the dream school, I feel like that has very much shifted in my mind because I think, again, fairly uncontroversially, a lot of the sort of the quote unquote best schools in most of the cities are the ones with the most simple names, right? Shanghai, it's usually Shanghai American Concordia. Vietnam has a school called UNIS, United Nations International School, or South Saigon. Hong Kong International School, Hong Kong International School, HKS. It's quite straightforward. But what's been interesting to me is I've seen a lot of people make it to these schools, and I think sort of an apt metaphor. And I apologize for anyone who's listening who maybe doesn't watch sports. You could very much sort of compare it to sports teams, right? And I think I could make sort of apt comparisons for even non-sports fans. So, for example, with baseball teams, the New York Yankees is, I think if you play for the Yankees, you've made it, right? Regardless of whether or not they had a good season or not. But if we really break it down, there's some players that get to the Yankees and they don't play well, right? There's some players that played really well in their previous team and they get to the Yankees and they play worse. So I think in a very similar sense, one thing that has sort of changed my mind a bit was I've always sort of had this rose-colored glasses, especially actually of our alma mater, ASIJ, which, I should sort of add a caveat that I do think it's a great school, but I think those rose-colored glasses are beginning to sort of become more transparent as I get older, and I begin to sort of realize that, I guess another comparison would be if you're a soccer player, if you go to Real Madrid, it might not be the best thing for you, right? You could go to Real Madrid and it could be the worst move you made in your career. So I know it's a sort of a very wishy-washy answer, but yeah, my sort of wishy-washy answer is that I think there is those list of schools, and you can ask any teacher at any school and they'll be like, okay, Seoul International School, maybe Seoul Foreign School to a certain degree. And there's all these schools out there, but when it comes to sort of quality of life, independence of curriculum, how you just fit into that school, right? Some teachers just fit in like a glove, and a lot of it's chance. Maybe you're a huge basketball person and you arrive at a school and there just happens to be like a head or assistant basketball position and you just mesh right in and it works perfectly. And you could go to another school and, basketball is maybe your big thing. Apart from teaching, obviously, it's not like the States where you have pure coaches like American football. But, maybe basketball is a huge thing, but you get to a new school and there's a coach already there who's been coaching 20 years and an assistant coach that's been there 15 years. And neither of them are no sign of retiring. So in that case, are you going to be happy? So I don't know, that's sort of my long answer, that I think there are these schools that everyone considers a dream. And I think they're mostly great schools. I don't think they're so-called tier one schools for a reason. But with that said, at an individual point, going back to my example, the Yankees or Real Madrid, I definitely my perception has changed a bit in regards to where is my dream school. And I mean, if you were to ask me now, I think my dream school is where I am right now. I'm happy. I've got a great boss, great vice principal. I love the kids here. They let me coach soccer. I can do MUN. So I think the dream school definitely depends on that individual base. With that said, though, there's definitely a certain minimum, right, salary you want, a certain minimum housing you want. And fortunately, where I am, it checks out. I wouldn't be happy if I had everything I had right now. And for example, if I was getting paid half, no, I wouldn't be happy.
Well, you said some nice things about your employer. I hope they're listening. Might be a nice little raise.
Well, just in case. Yeah.
But I thought,
I mean, I do mean it too, though. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounded very genuine, and I thought that was cool. You said it was wishy-washy. I think that was a very grounded answer. That's a very, realistic answer for the human experience. We don't live in a fairy tale. You're not going to find this special place that's going to be perfect, but you got to look back. You got to take a step back, look at what you have. Are you happy? Are you not happy? You're happy. So that sounds cool. Now, Korea, though, what do you think? What are some of the big differences between Korea and Japan? Obviously, they're in East Asia. A lot of people who are not in East Asia might think they're similar, but maybe you don't think so. What do you think is some of the standout differences?
I actually want to start with that, with answering what is been incredibly similar. And it surprised me, so just to sort of name some off the top of my head is one would be sort of what is called a hagwon here. In Japan, we call it juku, and the Korean college exam test. So in Korea, exactly like Japan, there is a test seniors take senior year, and that one test dictates which university they get into. And now what makes this very, very intense is in countries like Korea and Japan, your college name can basically decide everything, right? Your future employment is very much hinging on it. So you basically have these just incredibly stressed out high school seniors who are waiting for this one test. And part of that connects to what I was saying earlier, the hagwon and juku in Japan, where I remember I had a friend who we were both mail boys at this law firm my junior year. I call it an internship, but really I was a mail boy. And he was at Keio University, which you may be familiar with. It's often considered the best or second best after Tokyo University. And I remember asking him, so how did you get into Keio? And he said, well, during the day, he said he would go to school and he would take a nap during class. He said school was a place where I got sleep. He said he tried to get 2-3 hours of sleep at school, and then school would end, and then his real studying would start at 4 p.m., where he would go to an intense after school lesson where I think it was something like 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. And because his regular school was public school, that cost nothing, but his juku was very, very expensive. We're talking 40, 50 bucks an hour. So that model is exactly the same here. And in that sense, sort of going back to international schools, I think, one of the reasons of the many of why Koreans and Japanese like to, go to international schools is to sort of get out of, what Japanese would call juken senso, where you have this ridiculous situation where you have 17, 18-year-olds studying 40 hours a week on non-school material for this one test, which will, dictate the rest of their life. So that was, a similarity I saw. Culturally, of course, I see what in Japan would be the senpai and kohai, right? The younger and the older. That is very much prevalent here. I would say even more so than in Japan. And my theory behind that is the military culture. It's mandatory military service here. So everyone has served in the military. and it's usually between about ages 18 to, I think 29 is the oldest, but most people serve between 18 to about 25. So that's why your attitude, especially when you're a 14-year-old boy or 17, 18-year-old boy towards someone who's 30 or 40 is sort of, there's an extra bit of reverence, because you know that they've put 18 months of their lives towards serving their country and serving in the military. Whereas you as a kid being 14 or 19 or 21, whatever, have not done that yet. So that's a similarity I've seen.
Can you explain that a bit?
Drinking.
Like, what is senpai and kohai though?
Just like elder and younger. So, I think Japanese care more about age and seniority than Americans do. And I find myself, especially sort of being a halfie, in between all of this, where there are moments where I do feel like Westerners maybe almost lack a respect towards elders. But there's also times where I'm like in Japan, it's just like, dude, this guy just lived like 2 years longer than you, like that's not a qualification to garner respect.
Okay, boomer. There's like a whole pastime of making fun of old people in America. Even the old people make fun of old people.
That's true. And I mean, like, I think, it's all about, towing a fine line of balance, right? Because I have spoken to some of my Silicon Valley friends, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, but the average age in Facebook, for example, is 29, man. So you and I would be old boys if we joined Facebook tomorrow.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of Facebook. It's like a big nursing home. Everybody gets a free meal. No. Facebook, I got my gripes with Facebook because I work in advertising. So my experience on Facebook is work. Facebook is work to me. Twitter, I enjoy Twitter a lot more than Facebook, just for the content, just because that's where things are actually happening. Things that are happening on Twitter, they make it to Facebook in 3 days. That's usually how it goes. And I don't know, but my whole work is involved with social media, so it all feels like work to me. But anyways, being old and creepy. Do you feel creepy sometimes as like an older guy? And you're like, what am I doing here? People are looking at me like I'm some creepy old man. Do you have that stigma? Or are you like, no, what are you talking about, Nate? I have a very normal life. I don't feel creepy at all.
I think age is very relative, right? It depends really on the presence of who you're in. Because there's moments, I'm sure you're similar, where I feel like a baby, and I sometimes don't like it though when I'm babied, because I feel like I'm an adult, because I am an adult, because I'm 34. But when I say that, I mean, like, when I'm in the presence of my father and his friends. This is an interesting episode. Would be like, I remember Julio Iglesias, the singer, was in Bahrain back when I was there in 2011. And I explained it, and I probably shouldn't have done this to my father and his friends, who are about, 30 years older than me, most of them. And I was like, yeah, Enrique Iglesias' dad came to Bahrain, and they gave me a bunch of crap for that. They're like, what do you mean Enrique Iglesias' dad? He is Julio's son. Don't disrespect Julio Iglesias. And
wait,
so I just feel like, it depends on who you're talking to.
Who is the dad? What's he famous for?
Oh, see, dude, you're a millennial, man. You're a baby. Julio Iglesias is Enrique Iglesias' dad, but he was sort of the prominent singer until Enrique, really rose in fame. Actually, during our formative years,
well,
I want to say we were probably
Enrique
about
had
teenagers
like
when he was.
one hit. He had Balamos.
I would strongly contest that. I mean, you do have Google open.
But no. But he had another song with Pitbull like 10 years later, though, didn't he?
Oh, it goes. Would you?
He's
dance
had two
I asked you
hits.
to dance? Would you run? You don't remember Jennifer Love Hewitt? I mean, that was like our youth, man. That was
Jennifer Lopez
like
or Jennifer
20,
Love Hewitt?
Probably. I Love Hewitt. Yeah.
Really? Oh, damn.
Super famous song, like Hero. I'll be your hero, baby.
Oh, I didn't know Jennifer Love Hewitt was involved in that. I thought she was just in movies like Can't Hardly Wait, 90s classics.
Oh,
I Know What You Did Last Summer.
That would be our youth, yes. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Scream. Lots of horror movies back then. like decent ones. I feel like they were very trashy in the 80s, and now they're very classy. I'm
Yeah,
like,
they
you know,
got a lot of the artistic, film crafters are getting involved in the horror now. So there's a lot of good content out. A lot of shit though.
exactly.
You ever get on
Oh yeah,
Amazon,
I mean,
Netflix, and
there's
you're
entire
like,
apps.
what are these movies? There's so many movies that I've never heard of, and they have like a 4.8 on IMDb.
It seems like it's easier to make movies now, but yeah, I remember when we were younger, it was like something bad. It's like you didn't want to share it with people if you watched a horror movie. It's like you have to keep it a secret. It was like now it's
Oh,
like,
I never had that problem.
you know.
Well, why'd you keep it a secret? You're like ashamed because you watch
Yeah, I
bad
felt like,
movies?
especially like in college, I just felt like I was so lowbrow. I felt like it was telling someone I just watched Freddy Got Fingered or something like that. It's like, which is actually an underrated movie, but it just felt like a lowbrow, very
great.
sort of, low hanging fruit in regards to sort of artistic, like I guess one could call theater.
Yeah, there were a lot of things when I was younger where I was embarrassed to talk about. Oh God, even if I was like attracted to a girl in high school, and like my friends never said that they thought she was hot, then I would be like a little nervous and be like, "Oh, I think she's hot," and they'd be like, "What are you gay?" or something. They'd probably say something like that, something really. They didn't even have to mean it homophobically. They just said it.
Yeah, no, I that's been a theme actually in some of my podcasts, that we were sort of like the good and bad generation, because we were spearheading sort of a lot of progressive values. I think we were sort of the first generation that were like, okay, what's wrong with gay marriage, but we were also at the tail end of sort of this nastiness of the 90s, where like we were saying certain slurs, not necessarily all homophobic, other slurs too, and there just wasn't very much I guess thought put to it.
Yeah, kids growing up these days. Well, my son, I mean, he had an iPad when he was like 2, so he's very savvy with the iPad, and it actually worked out with this remote schooling stuff. A lot of the kids, their parents probably have this lofty idea: no screen time for my child. They're gonna have a screen much later in life, and now when remote school starts, these kids don't know how to use an iPad. Give me a break. My kid is a master of an iPad. Sure, he hates spelling. He hates it, but he can use an iPad like a rock star, So it kind of worked out in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the skill sets, right, as we get older, he would be Generation Alpha. I mean, how much does spelling really matter, right? I mean, obviously, you'd want someone to be able to spell cat or something, but when it comes to complicated words, I feel like autocorrect has truly damaged my ability in spelling, because I will just purposely spell something incorrect now, knowing it's going to get corrected. And
Yeah. Well, that can be your
I live with
detriment,
that.
because you're like, it's almost right. And you're on your little iPhone and you're typing and you're like, why doesn't it give me the word? Why is the word that I want coming up? And then you got to rewrite it. And then you rewrite it wrong again and it still doesn't come up. Yeah, it's a nightmare. And then you're trying to say the F word and it says duck.
Yeah, it's always duck. They've never adjusted that, actually. I realized there's not a mode for that, is there? You have to manually click on the left top.
These iPhone guys do it on purpose. And you know what? I got an iPhone XR purchased in Shanghai. You know what I can't see on my phone that I will never be able to see on my phone? Guess.
Is it because you purchased it in China?
Yep. Just because I purchased it in China. Guess what I can never see on my phone?
Wow.
And we're talking about the lofty moral
Content?
Apple. Moral superiority Apple. I can't see the Taiwan flag on my phone. It comes up as a box with an X in it.
Every time, even
Every
on a
time.
U.S.
The emoji.
circuit.
The emoji character is not available
Oh, the emoji.
on mainland
Yeah,
China iPhones. Isn't that petty?
yeah. Wow.
Can you believe that?
Yeah, it's petty, but I'm not surprised. Yeah, it's definitely.
So, I mean, it's a good phone. I don't really want to get a new phone
hopefully
anytime
got a
soon.
deal.
I don't think I need to use the Taiwan flag that much, personally. I'm not like always, oh, Taiwan, but I'm not doing that. But I do like Taiwan, though. The occasional Taiwan tweet I want to send, I want to throw an emoji in there.
Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting country. Actually, I visited there last year, and or was it 2 years ago? That was 2 years ago now. And No, it was last year. No, 2 years ago. I forget it's 2021. Yeah, fabulous food, fabulous people. Their 7-Eleven game, and we didn't talk about this. And I'm gonna make a pretty bold statement and say that when it comes to the convenience store food, no one is close to Japan. I would say Taiwan was a
You're
distant second.
absolutely correct in that statement. There's nothing like a Japanese convenience store. You can get close. You go to Family Mart in Shanghai. It's almost there. Not quite though. You're not getting a pizza man. You're not getting a pizza man in a Shanghai Family Mart. Can you explain what a pizza man
Yeah.
is while I pull it up on the screen?
Yeah, it's actually I can't really eloquently say what it is. I mean, I don't know what Americans call the that pastry with
Steamed
stuff
bun,
inside
I
of it.
guess. Yeah.
That's it. It's a steam bun with literally like pizza flavor inside, and you can get pork flavor, you can get cheese flavor, curry flavor, and it all tastes brilliant. And it's only like $1. And surprisingly, because of the, I wouldn't quite call it deflation, but the lack of inflation the last 20 years, the prices are quite similar today. You can still go to a Japanese convenience store and get one of those buns for about $1. And
Yeah.
they taste better than, what would cost $4.99 in New York City or something at some, small restaurant.
Yeah, and so in China these are called baozi. So they used to the 7-Elevens in Shanghai used to have these. They discontinued them for some reason. Who knows? But there was a startup in China called baozi. It's like a combination of the word baozi and pizza. So they started doing it there. And where was I going with this? I drank too much sake, Nick.
Some about baozi.
Oh yeah, in Austin. Okay, in Austin there's a baozi place now. So you can get like they don't do the pizza ones, but they do one better, man. Brisket, beef brisket, Texas style, Texas barbecue
This
style.
is the thing, though. Do they charge more than $1.99?
Yeah, it's America, man. What do you expect? But it's great. It's called
man.
it's called Bowed Up. Oh, but it's fantastic. Brisket. They got a buffalo chicken one. It's so good.
Yeah, I guess. And now that we're older, we have money, right? That's one thing I always appreciate about Tokyo was we didn't need much money, and sort of just going back to a little bit international school stuff. I think that's what a lot of parents appreciated too, because I've worked at a variety of schools, variety of areas, and there are places where, I guess, lack of a better word, you get kids who flex. I remember when I was in the Middle East, there were kids with literally $100,000 cars. And I remember one kid especially was very not the most gentlemanly guy, and he would always ask me, "What kind of car do you drive, Mr. Harris?" And it's because he wanted to tell me what kind of car he drove. And at ASIJ,
kid,
yeah,
I drive a 1994 Taurus. You got a problem with that?
I mean, I really actually don't like Ford, so I do. I drove a Ford Escort in
How dare
college,
you.
so.
My dad worked for Ford in Japan, mind you, when we were in high school together. And I actually bought a Chrysler, so I got a Chrysler now, so I can't talk.
So I actually didn't know about your dad working at Ford, but yeah, I hated the car. It had no AC and made summers very hard.
Okay, for the record, Ford is not a perfect company. Most of their cars do have air conditioning.
True. It might have been more of a me problem than a Ford problem. But yeah, going back to the idea of wealth, that's something I feel quite proud about, even at my current school where, this is all public information, but I think our tuition is about, 28,000 and that for a high school at least. And then we also have dorms. So dorm students are paying about 40,000 a year. So, a pretty penny for high school education. But, I feel like the students are relatively grounded. There's no kids walking around with $5,000 watches. There's, when we used to do this thing called pastoral care where we would take students out to eat, and and the kids would be like, "Oh, should I get this extra, $4 drink?" And it kind of really reminded me of ASIJ because we were very similar in ASIJ. I remember, obviously with a few exceptions, most kids, we'd go out and we'd kind of be like, "Oh, how much is this 500 yen will last us at the arcade or something, and obviously there's other examples I don't want to get into details of, but you know what I mean? Like there were just, we were very, and I feel like within that group of friends, as I got older, I was like, oh, this kid probably could have gone out with, $300 every weekend, and it would not have hurt his, family's financial, what do you call it? Their financial status at all. But it was very purposeful. They wanted to make sure their high schoolers had a high school appropriate, lifestyle, high school appropriate budget. And, I think overall, I would say most international schools, most kids do a pretty good job. I mean, was it similar for you at ASIJ? I know we were only about a year apart, but.
Well, I wasn't flexing. I mean, my parents did pretty well for themselves, but I think I got an allowance, but I worked though. I mean, before I could be a bus monitor, and that was this great thing about ASIJ. If you were a high school student, you could have a job at the school being a monitor on the bus, because it's a K through 12 school, kindergarten through 12th grade. So all the little kids are on the bus, all the big kids are on the bus. What if we get in an accident? What if somebody needs to do CPR? Well, they deputize students to do that, and they gave CPR training, and it was great. I learned a skill. I learned something that could save somebody's life, and I got paid for just sitting on the bus and making sure kids didn't act crazy, and that was nice. And I did the late bus. That was like after the extracurricular activities. It was all the kids in the bus. I could make like $100 a week, and then I could go party on that budget, So I didn't need my parents' allowance. It was great. But I mean, in a place like Southeast Asia, a lot of the kids there, they have maids, they have drivers. Not really the case in Tokyo, where it's a lot more expensive. Yeah, sure, people are pretty well-to-do who send their kids to these schools, but they don't have, like, a housekeeper and a cook and a driver and an armed bodyguard like a lot of these kids in Indonesia or Philippines might.
That's very true. Yeah, I think it's definitely geographically different, but Japan is sort of one of those extremes, where I was like, so there almost was not much, light between a faculty kid and the CEO's kid. And I thought that was just a beautiful thing, because, it seems like in the United States, because you can drive from age 16, especially in places like, Texas, Kansas, et cetera, like those differences are only, magnified, because it's very obvious, if a kid is riding the bicycle to school versus the kid who's got the $80,000, BMW. So, that's something I find very refreshing. And I think it is also just sort of the ethos of people who've made it in the business world, right? You follow a lot of the writings by guys like Buffett or Bill Gates, et cetera. And they all have the same pattern where they seem to not spoil their children. I mean, I think Gates goes a little too far of saying like he's not leaving anything, right? It's not nothing or almost nothing, right, to his kids. But that seems to be their ethos,
Well, he's a weirdo, that guy. But anyways, I'd say at ASIJ, there was one guy who was flexing big, though. You probably know who I'm talking about. He's still flexing in a different way now. He's got some big muscles now. Now you probably definitely know who I'm talking about. Has he been in your show yet?
I definitely know what you're talking about, yeah. No, I've reached out a few times. I've not got a response yet. I don't know. Some people just don't want to do it, and it's understandable. I mean, like, I've enjoyed our conversation today, but it's definitely, for me, it wasn't that challenging, right? Because I can talk to you right now, and I've done it, right, 58 times already. But I could see how, if one is not used to conversing and then being on.
I'm pulling him up. I'm bringing in the ASIJ gossip.
Yeah. No,
Shinji. Shinji, he's a public figure. He's got a company, and let's promote his business too. He's got a great brand called Re-Earth. It's very natural cosmetics for women, premium stuff. This guy knows, he's got great taste, and he should definitely be on the Tokyo Alumni podcast, and he should definitely come on Expats on Air. And if he doesn't,
I'm hoping, yeah,
it's just a cop out, right? Shinji,
well,
it's on the record.
We'll see which one of us get him first.
I don't care. So one of us will get him. Shinji's he's like the Doseki guy. He's like the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah, he's definitely just one of those guys that kind of lives a life like a movie, which I find very admirable.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about him too much since he's not on the show. But yeah, I just wanted to do that to motivate him to get the conversation going. You know,
Get someone to send him this podcast, right? To say, hey, you're.
I'll make sure he sees it. Shit, sorry about that. A little notification. All right, man. We've been on the air for almost 2 hours. I think we can wrap it up. One thing, though, I want to ask you before we go. We talked about dream school and your whole opinion on that. Now, holidays, though. What's the dream little holiday for you? If you're living in Korea, you could jump down to Southeast Asia fairly easily. Is that where you're trying to go? Where's your dream holiday? Let's say if you got like a week off. Where are you going?
Oh, man. So this is obviously in a post-COVID world, yeah?
Yeah, of course.
You know, this actually sort of touches upon what we've spoken about already about Japan. There's just so many beautiful places I have not been to yet in Japan. And during these COVID times, I have through Instagram, I've all these friends and relatives going to all these places, and it looks like Hawaii. You know, I was just looking at my cousin Aki's. You know, she's been to she was at this place, and I thought it was Hawaii, and I clicked on it, and it was like 2 hours out of Tokyo. So yeah, I would really like to just travel around Tokyo, especially go north. I really haven't gone north of Ibaraki, which is like literally maybe 100 miles north. So there's that whole chunk of northern Honshu, like Akita and Aomori, which I would love to visit.
Have you been to Hokkaido much?
You know, the last time might have been through ASIJ, actually, 8th grade. I'm not sure if you went on that trip too, the Hokkaido.
Yeah,
8th grade
that was
trip.
last time I went skiing. I was 14.
Same. Yeah,
Japan.
last time I went skiing too.
Dude, we had a snowball fight.
Good memories.
We had a snowball fight. Dude, I want to get ASIJ in trouble. I think the statute of limitations has passed. This is more than 20 years ago. This is 1999, 2000, around that time. I was in 8th grade.
Yeah. I'm 2000, 2001.
Yeah, it would have been a year later for you. So we got in this big snowball fight in downtown Hokkaido. Students, faculty, it was a free-for-all. It was nuts. It was so much fun. The teachers started getting a little excited. Maybe there were some problem children that they really wanted to take some anger out on. Somebody got hit in the head with an ice ball that night and bled. And the ice ball was thrown by a teacher at a student.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming that teacher. All's fair in love and war and snowball fights. So I just got to say, before we get off the air, ASIJ, some things that happened were a little weird in the past, but I got nothing but good things to say about you. You know what I do?
Similar.
I actually read emails from ASIJ. I don't read emails from my college. Get fucked, college. I do read emails from ASIJ, though.
That's true. I like to keep up. I saw your post recently, so I was very happy. Like, it was a great time. It was like 2 days before coming on air.
Yep.
I was like, hey.
Yeah, it was all calculated, baby. That's the promotion schedule. So, yeah, we'll get this episode out ASAP. We'll get it in the ASIJ community. But I think what I really think is of value here for anybody listening is, hey, you've been in the international school circuit for a while. You have a lot of knowledge to share, insight. And I think if anybody's looking to become an international school teacher, whether they're fresh out of college or there's somebody like me, I'm not considering a career change. But if I were, being an international school teacher sounds like a pretty cool thing. And I think I learned a lot on this show, and it's been great that you could share your experience.
Well, thank you. I've had a great time talking to you. I can't believe it's already been 2 hours. Wow.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, if anyone at all, especially the younger folks, right? Who are thinking about teaching, or people who are even thinking about changing jobs. As we we have a mutual friend from class of '04. He got into teaching about 5 years ago, and we spoke actually extensively before he left his job and joined teaching. So, if you're sick of your job and you're looking for something new, international teaching is not a bad route, and definitely I'm available to talk to if you're an ASIJ alum or if you're a friend of Nathan's or whoever.
Yeah, I'm going to post this to Reddit. I'm going to get downvoted. All those Reddit haters are going to be like, stop promoting your shit in my community. Bunch of pussies. Anyways, let's end the show. Thanks, and I'm glad you handled my crudeness well. I think our shows have a different cultural element. I like to be very freewheeling, let's record this thing. Let's not edit it. Let's just keep the conversation going. Now, you censored me a little bit on your podcast. You have your reasons. I don't blame
censored you a lot. Yeah. And I apologize that I had to censor you so much. But as we discussed, it's different. It's more of a different goal, I guess, right? I was going to say ethos, but it's not even really my ethos. It's just more of the purpose of the podcast. Yeah.
There's something I totally forgot to bring up, and we'll wrap it up. But I think your show, I mean, it's great for your students, right? Like, your students are graduating from an international school. They're looking at making a career change or a career choice, and they're able to listen to dozens of people who have a similar background, and they're able to share their story of how they got where they are today. And I think there's a lot to be learned for, international school students, for that matter, checking out the Tokyo Alumni podcast.
Definitely, yeah. That's definitely one of the points I hope to accomplish. And yeah, man, it's great being on air. And I guess this goes right away. So I guess no editing, huh? We just go Bill O'Reilly style, huh? We just
Bill O'Reilly style. Yeah, I'll upload it tomorrow, but yeah, I'm not gonna edit it. I'm just gonna put this out. Man, I got a job. Editing, editing is easy for me. I'm a video editor. I can edit a TV commercial, easy. But rendering, you gotta wait. There's all this processing time. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to put this out live, and eventually we're gonna do it live on stream. And we'll get some callers, maybe. Maybe we get like a guy like Andrew Brown to call in live.
Fun. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good idea, but it would be fun. Yeah.
It would be fun. Anyways, man, you don't have to hang up on Zoom yet, but I'm going to press stop on the record. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.